Well, it has become that time. Time to review one of the most famous bad trilogies ever made in a 3-in-1. Except this is probably going to be more of a 3-in-2 or 3-in-3 because there is too much to talk about in these movies. A lot to talk about. Today, for this first episode of the 3-in-3, we're going to be reviewing Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. Cue the theme song. This is one of the most hated Star Wars movies ever made. And I'm not 100% sure why. I mean, it's not a great Star Wars, but it's an okay Star Wars. Like, there's some good things about it, but there's a lot of bad things about it. Let's get to the story first. So, the story is, 1 second. Okay. Okay, let's get back to the review, I guess. So the story for this movie is... You know what, I'll just let someone explain it for you in stop motion.
Once upon a time, there was a boy who lived in the desert. But we don't care about him. First, some Jedi Knights went to save the planet, but there was a trap. So they went down to the planet and met a new friend. And then they saved the queen. Thanks, guys. But their ship got damaged. So they all went to Tatooine to fix it. And met a boy who lived in the desert. He was a pod racer. A really good one. It was because he had lots of he was the chosen one. So they took him with him, and they ran into a bad guy. But they got away. They went to Coruscant to get help. But all they got was a lot of talk. So they went to save the planet themselves. They had a big fight, and the boys blew stuff up, and they beat the bad guy. Then they all had a big party to celebrate. The boy grew up and became...
Okay, you guys got that? Good. Let's start with the good things. There's a lot of good things in this movie. Like, how about the sword fights? And Darth Maul. I wasn't around when this movie came out, but I can only imagine what this looked like the first time. My mom never let me watch the prequels because she wanted me to see the originals. She even lied to me and told me that episode 4 was the first movie, which technically was the first movie made, but it's not episode 1. I still generally kind of like the prequels, but they're not as good as I remember them. But this sword fight was absolutely amazing, and Darth Maul himself is awesome. But the biggest problem with this entire sword fight is after barely any screen time in the movie, they killed him. And he was the coolest character. Well, I mean, technically he's not dead, but if you're like a casual Star Wars fan, you wouldn't know that he eventually came back in the Clone Wars TV show. But for a while, for years, I thought he was dead. And this was an awesome character. I mean, look at this. He had double lightsabers and everything. And they killed him. He didn't even get a full 30 minutes of screen time. And what did they give a lot of that screen time to? reason why they cut 90% of Jar Jar's screen time in the other prequels. Though, to be fair, I don't hate him as much as other YouTubers. But to be fair, I rarely ever smiled during any of the scenes that were supposed to be funny. The only time I smiled was during the war scene near the end of the movie. And I regret that very much. But they gave this more screen time than probably the coolest character since Darth Vader? What were you thinking, George Lucas? I mean, technically, he corrected his mistakes by cutting him out of most of the prequels. But, I mean, give him some screen time, because if his comedy were good, he could be a pretty funny character. But he wasn't. I mean, he pulled off C-3PO. Why did this fail? Probably because he didn't hire anyone else to write anything for these movies. He pretty much did all the work. And that's pretty stupid, considering the worst of the original series, in my opinion, was the first movie, because it was like the first episode 4, because it was the least interesting of the original. And that was the one where he didn't have much help. Okay, let's get out of complaining for a little bit and back into some other good things. Like, the pod race was a pretty great scene. Probably the best, one of the best in the movie, behind the lightsaber duel. It's pretty much the second legit action scene in the whole movie. And also, if you just saw, practical explosion. That does bring up that 90% of this is CG. There's so much CG in these movies that you wonder, why didn't they just decide to make this movie animated? But the scene also does have some legit fan service, like Jabba the Hutt showing up during the pod race. And this guy from earlier, but also a complaint. This guy behind him looks like he came out of an N60, like he was meant to be a model in the pod racing game. Which is also another good thing to come out of this scene. I actually have the Star Wars Episode 1 Racer game. And I hear great things about it, but I haven't really played it yet. But I'll probably do like a gameplay video of it or something when I do. Also, I'll show an image of it in a little bit, but Greedo from Star Wars Episode 4 legitimately shows up. The only reason I know that's Greedo is because of a deleted scene, which I'll show right now.
What's this all about?
He said I cheated.
Did you?
No.
You still think you cheated? You'll just have to tolerate his opinion. Fighting will not change it.
Chisme pa culpa, Greedo. Inagua ko press magrita.
Though this scene might anger some people, because it does make Greedo shot first officially canon. But I don't really care. I never even saw the original Star Wars. I'm pretty sure I even joke about it in a Super Star Wars video at some point. I'm also filming this right after the, I pre-recorded a bunch of Super Star Wars, so that's on my mind right now. Anyways, yeah, so this isn't as cool as it is to most people because it probably angers them that that Greedo shot first is officially canon. But what are you gonna do? Now let's get to a bunch of crap. Like, if you're watching episode 1 on VHS or DVD, Then you had this thing as Yoda. And this is the ugliest looking Muppet Yoda I've ever seen in my life. Good thing that on Blu-ray it was replaced with a better CGI. Well, that does come with the problem that way too much of this movie is CGI. That also explains that the acting in these movies aren't that good. But can you blame them when 90% of your movie is CGI? Like Jar Jar Binks, even that, his body wasn't even meant to be CGI, but then George Lucas decided to make it CGI. And the actors had nothing real to interact with. Back when they before they decided to make all of Jar Jar CGI, they didn't even know what Jar Jar was supposed to be. They just said they just saw some guy wearing a duck on his head. Way too much CGI are in these movies. Way too much. I actually do like how they tried to keep Emperor Palpatine's identity secret. As I just said, it's Senator Palpatine. In the other movies, he's Chancellor, and in the original trilogy, he's Emperor. He's better known, at least easier pronounced, as Darth Sidious, which is a funny name, but still. So they did a decent job, though anyone with a brain could tell that they're played by the same person and their voices are the same. And they hint at it at the end. I feel like that should have been the big reveal of episode 2. Because pretty much, they don't reveal it till the 3rd episode, but anyone with a brain would have figured it out by this one. So, I think that's it for this first episode. I'll give you the ratings soon. So, my ratings for this movie are... Next episode, I will continue this 3-parted 3-in-1, where I will be reviewing Attack of the Clones.